Good morning, everyone. I'd like to remind everybody today that we are live streaming, so if you would remember to use your microphone so those that are joining us by computer can hear what is said. Our first order of business is to reconvene the Audit Committee. Curator Graham.
I can reconvene the committee, but my memory is we've taken care of all of our business.
No, you have an ethics and compliance report?
Okay, in the open meeting.
Right.
Okay. This time, Ryan, could you step forward along with Larry? At this time, Ryan Rapp and Larry Plutko will go to the podium and deliver a report on ethics and compliance.
Good morning. I'm happy to introduce Larry Plutko, the founder of and president of LA Plutko and Associates. He will present on higher education ethics and compliance programs, including the approach at the University of Missouri. Prior to founding his consulting firm, Mr. Plutko had an extensive career leading higher education and healthcare organizations' ethics and compliance programs. Most recently, Mr. Plutko served as the system-wide compliance and ethics officer for the University of Texas System.
Well, good morning to all, and I very much appreciate this opportunity to give an overview of the ethics and compliance program that we're planning for the university. We are in the beginning stage of developing a central program role at the system level, and I've been working very closely with Ryan Rapp and Steve Owens, and I've appreciated the support that they've given to me. I have two left feet, so I have to make sure I do this correctly. There we go. Here's the outline for my comments for the morning. First of all, I'd like to talk about compliance programs in higher education, its genesis and development, because it's rather recent, actually. Then move to what we're considering for the central compliance program at the University of Missouri. What would that look like, and what would it include? And then the last section, what are the desired outcomes? Why is this important to do, and to do it now? I'd like to just give an overview of some early models of compliance in higher education. If you go back to the administration of Bill Clinton, Janet Reno was the Attorney General, and she passed away just not too long ago, about a month ago, I believe. And the first head of HHS, Office of the Inspector General, was June Gibbs Brown. And they established Operation Restore Trust in 1995. And I had started my career in corporate compliance around 1989. So very soon, our academic health centers and hospitals and so on were being very pressed with regard to establishing a compliance program, because the Office of the HHS, CMS, were starting the recoupment programs on billing which they considered to be false claims. So that was really the genesis of it. From there, we began to see the PATH audits, which are the physician at teaching hospital audits, in 1998. And a lot of our academic medical centers had to indeed put in particular programs to catch the role of physician supervision with medical residents. Then turning to research compliance, that was an early focus in academic and healthcare areas with NHS, NSF, and all other forms of federal funding. Then we saw the development of athletics compliance, FERPA, the Department of Education's requirements, and they have become voluminous over the last 2 decades. Compliance programs in the academic areas were largely decentralized, and the oversight and reporting was rather unclear in the early days of compliance in higher education. Now, I remember when I was living in Seattle, I lived there again, and I went to Boeing, and I heard the report yesterday that a number of students from Missouri S&T who have been employed by Boeing, which is really a great thing. But Boeing, very early on with Lockheed Martin and Martin Marietta, established some of the very first compliance programs because they had defense industry contracting. So a lot of the individuals who were involved in healthcare compliance and academic compliance learned a lot from the compliance programs at these firms. Then we have compliance at a crossroads. Today, it's become a significant burden for a lot of organizations. It's costly. The number of federal, state, and even local laws and regulations that we need to tend to. And there are increasing expectations of our external stakeholders. For example, the public, alumni, donors are looking for greater transparency from universities. We have the expansion of university campuses, even in international settings. You don't have actual international campuses, from what I understand. You have an international presence. But for those who do, we have to look at the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, export controls, how universities deal with the laws and regulations of other host countries. So that's another growing area of concern. And then there's the mounting pressures and accountability that came out of Penn State's report done by Louis Freeh. I remember working with Texas A&M, TCU, and some other of the university systems in Texas when the report came out, and we received a notice from Governor Perry at that time to tend to the summer camps. What kind of education were individuals who were conducting summer camps receiving? So we had to put a program together at that level. The other thing, too, here is in 2009, there were major changes to the False Claims Act, and it began to look at university-based research and healthcare billing and operations. And this is an important area because research could be barred from government research funding if we don't have this particular area nailed down. So you can see here that the expanse of regulations is very vast and very complicated. Today we have many centers of excellence in university-based compliance. I would say that probably 65% of universities have a corporate compliance office and officer today. And the recruitment of compliance officers in this time and age is really based on subject matter expertise and leadership skills. You're finding centralized programs based on shared services, and there are professional standards and credentialing, something that we did not have in the early days. But before I move into the pathway that we're considering here at the University of Missouri, I'd like to talk about some definitions here. First of all, we know what is a compliance program in higher education. Well, I consider it a comprehensive program across the university enterprise. It helps institutions and employees. It's not police work. It's not Cape Crusader work. It helps in 3 ways. It helps institutions and employees conduct operations and activities ethically. It helps with the highest level of integrity. It helps conduct operations and activities with legal and regulatory requirements. So the corporate compliance officer is a helper, a facilitator. He has or she has subject matter expertise to deploy compliance resources and support across the university enterprise. This is a time of severe budget cuts in higher education, especially in state institutions, and I think it's imperative that this role be considered at this particular time. Statistics show that across all industries and all sectors, that significant compliance and ethics issues arise when organizations are financially stressed. We all know that the fines can be incredibly high if something goes wrong in the area of healthcare billing, research funding, FERPA, HIPAA, and so on. No one wants to land in this particular spot. So moving then to the program elements here. These are the 7 classic elements of a compliance program. There's governance, there's leadership, there are policies and procedures and guidelines, a code of conduct, there's training and education, there's good communication of the program, there's internal monitoring and auditing, enforcement of disciplinary standards and prompt reporting are part of the backbone of a compliance program. Now, in talking about where we would start here at the University of Missouri, we thought that it would be good to look at the areas of healthcare compliance, research, privacy, and security. I left security out there, and I apologize. And some administrative areas, because these are the areas that impact university revenues. They're the most complex, and we devote special attention to these areas to a great degree. Here is a matrix that was put together by the National Association of College and University Attorneys. It shows just how extensive regulations are across the university. Time and personnel and dollars to manage these are incredibly expensive. So here's an opportunity to deal with these in a shared services environment, if you will. And how do we do this effectively? Subject matter expertise is lean and costly. How can we deploy resources more effectively? For example, even in the area of clinical trials. It's a very complicated area, and expertise in that particular area is difficult to find. We have some recommendations here, and one is to have a nationwide search for and recruitment of a qualified compliance officer, and we're hoping to begin that when President Choi arrives in your organization in March. Then to establish a university-wide executive compliance committee to have oversight on the program. And this is a standard element of compliance programs, that you have leadership involved in the compliance and ethics program. We would think that it would be advisable to have the Board of Curators Audit Committee formally sanction the program and also include it within the committee structure. We would have the development of training and communication and the establishment of a work plan, probably on a 2-year basis. Now, why do this? I believe compliance programs, and I've been in them for, I think, 34 years now, a long time, but I've seen tremendous growth. And I believe that this is the time to redouble efforts to enhance a culture of compliance, ethics, and integrity throughout universities in America, and specifically here at the University of Missouri, because it promotes and develops common solutions to common problems. The other thing, too, it provides cost-effective shared services approaches to deploying compliance education, tools and structures, personnel, and approaches. It plays a significant role in shaping the organizational ethos, creating a climate that strengthens relationships and reputation, and that's so critical to the mission of a university, reputation and right relationships. It enables us also to better adapt to the changing regulatory pressures. And I don't believe, even in the change of administrations that we have, that we're going to see a major rollback in a lot of these regulations. They're here to stay. But I believe that successful networking with other compliance programs throughout the country is another way of bringing more information and better structures and better opportunities to university compliance as we move along. So this is an overview of the program, and if there are any questions that you have for me, I'd be happy to field them for you.
Any questions at all? Larry, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Are you ready to adjourn the committee?
That completes the business of the audit committee, and we are ready for a motion to adjourn. Ross?
I'll make a motion.
Phillips?
Second.
Cindy?
Curator Graham,
Yes.
Curator Phillips,
Yes.
and Curator Voss.
Yes.
Meeting's adjourned.
Next item of business is the board chair's report. This is my last meeting as chair of the Board of Curators, something for which I'm very grateful and also somewhat sorry. What a year it's been. As I sat down to review what all has happened, it's hard to believe that it's all contained in only 12 months. We've certainly faced a lot of adversity, but I believe that adversity can either make you bitter or make you better. And I believe that we are better for what we've experienced. First, I want to thank both Mike Middleton and Hank Foley for bravely stepping up to the plate at a very critical time. Both of these gentlemen have worked extremely hard this past year to keep the doors running, the lights open, the doors open, the lights on, and the trains running on time. And they've done so very successfully. Thank you both. Next, I want to thank the system staff. I know that this has been an incredible time for all of you, and I know there were times last winter when you wondered what your families looked like. Thank you all for your selfless devotion to the university system. Special thanks to Steve Owens and Cindy Harmon, who support this group expertly and very well every day. When I was asked 3 years ago to one day serve as chair of the Board of Curators, I thought at that time that I would use that year to focus on the value of public higher education. Events being what they've been, other topics seem more pressing. So if you'll allow me a few minutes, I'd like to say that public education is one of the things that makes this country unique and one of the things that makes this country great. At the time when this country was founded, education was not something that was available to everyone. Our founding fathers realized that if the people are to rule the citizenry, if people are to rule themselves, they must be educated in order to do so wisely. Educating the citizenry and the electorate makes for better government. Educating the leaders is imperative. Education is what economists call a public good, and thus the public should pay for it. However, we all know that when budgets get tight, there's less and less money from the state for education. What I had hoped to do was to advocate for public support of education. I think it should be one of the responsibilities of the curators to convince the legislators that we all benefit when we educate our young adults. They're better employees, better parents, better teachers, better citizens when they're educated not only in the STEM disciplines and not only in their chosen field of work, but also in the humanities, history, literature, art, music, and theater. I regret that I was not able to focus on the value of public education while I was chair, but I challenge those of you remaining on the board to keep the value of public support for education always in your mind and in your discourse. Talk to your elected officials, your friends, neighbors, and fellow taxpayers, and convince them that education is something we should all pay for. So then came the events of October and November of 2015, when it became obvious that not all of our students felt valued by their peers and their teachers and the administrators of the university. It was apparent that the Board of Curators and all the university faculty, staff, and administration needed to focus on changing those things which made students feel less important. So I chose as my theme for the year a culture of respect. Respect for those who are different than you, respect for the rights of those who think differently than you, respect for ideas you might not have thought about before, respect for those who have come before you and for those who will come after you. The first thing we needed to do was to figure out how and why some students felt less valued, so the board commissioned an audit of the programs and policies on all of our campuses to determine where we were at that time. We created a task force to develop best practices for the near term and the long term, and to improve the inclusiveness of our campuses. We asked law school professor Chuck Henson to help us jumpstart the program while we searched for our first ever System Chief Diversity Officer, who we found in Dr. Kevin McDonald. Thank you to Chuck for helping us in our time of need, and welcome to Dr. Kevin McDonald, who is proving his value to us already. Some of the greatest experiences and the greatest demonstrations of respect that I have experienced in my professional life happened during our presidential search this year. We expanded the Presidential Search Committee to include people of diverse racial backgrounds, to include students, faculty, staff, and alumni of the university. And the board thought it important to hear from all voices and to make sure that many differing perspectives were brought to the table as we sought the 24th president for the system. All the committee members were committed to the process and devoted to the university. Their dedication was readily apparent, and we will be having a thank you for them tomorrow. What I appreciated was that everyone on the committee felt respected enough to explain their viewpoint and to trust the others to listen and to hear. There were times in our meetings when someone would make a point that a candidate had failed to demonstrate an appropriate sensitivity to a group or to recognize why something was culturally insensitive. Sometimes other members of the committee would acknowledge that they hadn't considered that viewpoint, but could now see it. It didn't necessarily change people's minds. Sometimes it did, but sometimes it didn't. What was important to me was that first, everyone felt respected enough to offer an honest opinion. If they heard something troublesome, they spoke up and voiced their concern. Second, everyone listened. Oftentimes, the opinions changed other people's perspectives, but not always. But I thought that everyone listened to the opinions of others and gave thought to what they heard. Most importantly, disagreement was viewed as just that. Disagreement was not interpreted as a value judgment. I believe this process has yielded us a great leader in Dr. Moon Choi, the president-designate of the University of Missouri System. I'm excited for Dr. Choi's leadership, and I know that he brings passion for public education and for the creation of an inclusive environment at the University of Missouri. One of the responsibilities and privileges of chairing the Board of Curators is to read the history of the University of Missouri, and I have taken comfort in it when the going was tough. It's good to know that these are not the only rough times the university has experienced. No one has seriously considered shutting down the university as they discussed in the early years. And for all the problems that we've had keeping a full complement of curators, we've always had a quorum, which was not the case during the 1860s. But the time that spoke to me the most was the time of the fire that destroyed Academic Hall and left us with our iconic columns. See if this fact pattern sounds familiar to you. Samuel Spar Laws had been forced out as president of the university in 1889. Quoting from the book, "But to contemporaries and to us today, the selection of the new president was the paramount problem. The Board Committee on Nominations certainly took its task seriously. At the August meeting in 1889, it informed the board that it had written to the presidents of Harvard, Yale, Cornell, Johns Hopkins, and Michigan. It was impossible to follow chronologically the negotiations or offers, but the evidence shows the earnestness and thoroughness of the search for the best man available. Finally, the committee invited Richard Henry Jesse, professor of Latin at Tulane, to St. Louis for an interview in December of 1890, and were so favorably impressed that they immediately recommended his election. Jesse came to Columbia at once to interview the full board, not to be interviewed, and was unanimously elected. He was not too favorably impressed, especially with the echoes of the Laws fight and the local factions, but a month later accepted the job. The choice was excellently received throughout the state by the press. He was hardly settled in the new position and ready to go ahead when the old academic building burned to the ground in January, and the university faced the third major crisis in its history, as threatening as the starving time in Lathrop's first administration, or the troubled decade of the 60s, which is referred to in the book as the time of troubles. As on the two previous times of trial, the university emerged stronger than ever. History will judge whether 2015 and 2016 are times of trouble or just a footnote in the University of Missouri, the Second 100 Years, soon to be written by Steve Owens. Either way, I'm confident that the university is already on its way to once again merging from adversity stronger than ever. Thank you to my fellow board members for all of your support in this past year, and my best wishes to those of you who remain. Our next topic is strategic plan highlights from the University of Missouri St. Louis. Chancellor George.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Hendrickson, and let me thank all of the Board of Curators for everything you do for the university. We've got a great board. We're working together very well. It's not always been that way, but right now it is, and so I couldn't be happier for the board that we have in place. And it's always great to have you at the University of Missouri St. Louis. Sorry, it's always in December, and it's always cold, but it's so be it. I mean, we're of hardy stock here. What I'm asked to do is to talk about the strategic plan. The strategic plan now is about, I'd say, 4 years old. We collectively had a retreat when Tim Wolf was the president of the system, brought in a consultant, and came out with a template that all the campuses were using for the strategic plan, the system, health services, and so forth. And each of these plans had a strategy statement associated with it. And we were kind of patterned after industry doing this. And the one example that was always used was Edward Jones, which is headquartered here in St. Louis. They have a strategy statement that they wanted to increase the number of one-person offices throughout the nation. Interesting strategy statement, and that actually led their dramatic growth over the last decade or so. We have a strategy statement, the University of Missouri St. Louis, and that is to increase the annual number of degrees awarded by 20%. It was over a 4 to 5 year period. We haven't hit that yet, but we're making some really good progress in that direction, and I'll get to that shortly. We had 3 themes. The UMSL experience, a very important theme for us, considering particularly our student body, which is 3/4 commuter, 1/4 living on campus, community partnerships, one of our mantras here at the University of Missouri St. Louis, and program enhancements. We hit this year, and it's a little misleading, but I'll explain the number, but we hit the second highest number of students in the history of the university this past year, 17,000 students. Two years ago, we were just a little bit higher than that. It's a little misleading in the sense that 6,000 of those students are high school students taking our courses. So it's advanced credit, dual enrollment students. They still count, and in fact, it's an area that we recruit heavily from now. And then the other students, the nearly 11,000, are the degree-seeking students. But having said that, we've hit a record high in terms of the total number of students on the campus. Students of color or diversity students were 34%, and within that were about 22% African-American students. Our students here, particularly as compared to the other campuses, maybe a bit more like UMKC, are different. They're older, and the average age of our undergraduate body is about 26 to 27. They tend to be local. I mean, we do have international students. We do have students from every state in the union. We have 100 countries represented on the campus, but 90% of our student body is in a greater region, if you will, of St. Louis, and we're economically challenged. I mean, there's no question about that. And if you look at the lower right chart, the average family income at Columbia, Columbia, is $111,000. At St. Louis, it's $51,000. So our students are very challenged, and more students are first-generation students, i.e. they're the first one in their family to actually get a degree. For those of you that have been in our commencement ceremonies, it's so exciting. I mean, there's bullhorns and there's beach balls, and I mean, as long as it's safe, you can cheer and have as much fun as you want at commencement. And we've got 3 ceremonies coming up next weekend. 45% of our students on Pell Grants. Here's an interesting statistic: 75% of our first-time students are transfers. Largely from the community colleges. We've got a very strong relationship with the community colleges, whether it's St. Charles Community College, St. Louis Community College, Jeffco, Mineral Area, or going across the state as well. We're 56% women, minorities, as I mentioned earlier, 33%. Our freshman ACT scores, and you saw this in our early reports, keep going up, and we're now over 24. And we're very proud of that. It's above the state average. It's above the national average. It's the lowest in the system, but it's a very good high score. We're doing things right in terms of progressing for graduation and retention. We now have hit 80% for first-time students returning for the fall semester. That's the highest we've ever had. In terms of students graduating in 6 years, and we tend to do a 6-year graduation rate, not a 4-year. We do have a number of students that graduate in 4 years, but 6 is more typical. We're up to 58%. I don't know if you might recall 2 years ago we were 41%. So we are now 58%, and I'm told by our Dean of Enrollment we're going to be in the 60s next year. So we're moving in the right direction, and that, of course, helps in terms of trying to meet our goal of increasing by 20% the number of graduates. And the number of Pell Grant recipients receiving degrees, a very high number. This is almost 1,300. Again, it's unique on this campus. Well, if I have only one slide to show you in this whole presentation, this is it. We hit this past year 3,200 degrees awarded. We were less than 3,000 2 years ago. So, in fact, this is a state which is kind of like enrollment driven. I mean, it's the enrollments, and that's important, and that certainly is good for the bottom line. You want students that are paying tuition and dollars coming in, but what really counts is students getting the degrees. That's really what counts. And, there's input measures, that's what enrollment is. There's output measures, and that's what, getting degrees. So, kudos to us on the 3,200 and everyone else associated with it. Some bragging points. There's something called Pay Scale, and it recently put a publication out of the highest starting salaries. S&T, the highest, no surprise. But, WashU, SLU, but hey, fourth for UMSL in terms of starting salaries of graduates. We now have 95, almost 96,000 alums, and that's absolutely amazing when you consider that we were founded we were a golf course. We were a golf club back in 1963, and to have that many alums, and in terms of people with multiple degrees, we actually have 106,000 degree holders. The 75% of our alums work and live right here in the St. Louis region, and we really drive the workforce of St. Louis. No question about that. We educate St. Louis. And just, some numbers here of, numbers of graduates in different states. Some bragging points again in terms of what we're doing. While we do community engagement, while we do Educate St. Louis, we have some of the best programs by national measures. And one is international business. You heard about that briefly at breakfast today. We've been consistently in the top 20, sometimes as high as 8, most recently 17th for our international business program. It's by design. It's not by happenstance. We work hard at that, and we have started universities in Kuwait, Oman. We've started great programs at Nanjing University in China. In fact, we were first in at Nanjing from St. Louis, and now Emerson has a major research installation there. And in fact, Nanjing is now the sister city of St. Louis, and that's because of what UMSL did in starting that relationship. Online nursing program was ranked by a U.S. News and World Report as the tops in the nation. It's the only online baccalaureate degree program where those who started in 2008, 2009 completed the program in 6 years or less. Everyone did it. So, you know, for Curator Phillips, yeah, you see this, don't you? Yeah, okay. More online rankings. We're first among Missouri universities for masters in education. There's a variety of criteria that the U.S. News and World Report uses. First among Missouri universities overall for baccalaureate degree programs. So, you know, we take online education very seriously, and as you heard from throughout this whole process and some of the questions that were posed to students the other day, that you know, the students find the online programs very helpful, not exclusively online, but mixing with face-to-face. I'll skip that. I'm going to go. Now, academic analytics. This is where we judge faculty productivity. This is where we judge academic quality. We look at publications, grants, contracts, things of that sort. We do extremely well at the University of Missouri St. Louis. Among public universities that are called the high research category, we rank 7th among the publics, 15th overall nationally. We're ahead of institutions like Alabama, like Texas Tech, Auburn, Kansas State, and so forth. So something to be said about the quality of our faculty and the quality of the students, because our faculty actively engage students in their research and scholarship. You saw that at the breakfast meeting, and that's something that we do extremely well here. We have the lowest research expenditures of all the campuses, but are vectors in the right direction. So we're, you know, 16 million, 18 million, 19 million. So we are going in the right direction of research expenditures. You've heard about our veteran programs. I mean, they're outstanding. Military friendly, that's how we're characterized by Victory Media. Best for vets, that's how we're characterized by Military Times. We have a veteran center now. We have a Department of Veteran Military Studies that's really going gangbusters. And in the area of diversity, inclusion, equity, for 3 years running, we've received a Higher Education Excellence Award from Diversity Magazine, Insights of Diversity, which is the main magazine in this arena. So kudos to all our people that are involved in that. St. Louis Public Radio continues to excel. They got an award, a Peabody Award, recently for their coverage of all the events in Ferguson. And I must say, you know, I think their coverage was as good as anyone, particularly in terms of balance, you know, trying to present the whole picture of what was going on in Ferguson. And here's an interesting stat at the bottom bullet. We became the news talk leader for morning drive time radio listeners. I don't know how they got that figure out, but hey, I'll take it. But we surpassed KMOX, you know, the Cardinal station. So if you're going to be listening to talk radio while you're driving, hey, St. Louis Public Radio is at 90.7 on the dial. We continue to hold our own very well on gifts, grants, but particularly in philanthropy. We completed 2 years ago a capital campaign, took from what was about $7 million a year in fundraising to about $30 million a year. We oscillate between 27, 30, 31 million a year, and great gifts from local companies. Whether it's Express Scripts, which of course is headquartered right here on the campus, who have contributed to the Bridge program, Ameren, Emerson, located right next to campus basically as well. Those of you that came to the reception last night, you had a chance to meet Terry and Stan Firks. They became the first alums to reach the $5 million mark in philanthropy. We have to keep in mind that since we're such a young university, 53 years old, we have only till recently had what I would call a rich alumni base in terms of wealth to give back as well as time and so forth. And we now have that. So the alumni base now is maturing, and thank you very much for Terry and Stan. Their gifts help bring other gifts along the way. We've had more capital construction and more renovation taking place in this past 2-year period than the history of the university, even when we were first built. So the Recreation Wellness Center looks like it's an aircraft, something ready to take off. And I just learned about this morning. There's an organization called the National Intramural Recreational Sports Association, and they just tagged us as the 2017 Outstanding Sports Facility. So we'll get a news press on that and so forth. Science Learning Building. We just opened that up. It's a great space. It's about a $32 million facility. Took it out of our own hide, but that's the way sometimes these things get funded, but it's just fantastic. And we now have some of the best teaching and research facilities in sciences in the region. We had some of the worst before, and now we have some of the best. The optometry patient care facility, you all had a chance to visit that at the reception last night. Again, a real coup, and I want to thank the board for approving that. And I know there was a lot of concern on the part of the board 3 years ago about bond ratings and all that, and the bond rating did not get hurt at all by us bonding this building. And then the business building, it's a combination of funds, $10 million from the state, $10 million private fundraising. That's about 3/4 up. And we expect to be in classes full bore really fall in 2017. Let me just make one, I'm just about done, but let me just make a few comments. The Missouri Review Commission, which has to complete their report by December 31st, it's co-chaired by Jeannie Singfeld and by our own Gary Forsey. They met on this campus here this week, and they asked me, as they've done for every chancellor, to come make a presentation, and particularly to talk about challenges. So let me just mention a few challenges we have, because I've given you lots of great, good, happy news, and there's a lot of good, happy news here, but, we do have our challenges. We did go through a budget realignment process. I reported on that to the board during the past year, and we're aligning ourselves. We were doing about 3/4 of the problem this year, which we're doing, and another quarter of the problem next year, but we have to stay the course. So that's one challenge, to stay the course, and certainly with the help of Rick Bonyak, our new CFO, and Chris Billing and others, that we are staying the course. We will have a balanced budget. Now, having said that, looking at what's happening with the state treasury, I think we're going to have some challenges, but we still have the pathway laid out, the template for a balanced budget. We did eliminate a number of positions, and we had to do that. You can't balance a budget without eliminating positions. What we also noticed, and I call this sort of a challenge and an opportunity, is we asked students, prospective students coming to the university, what kind of degree programs would you like to see? And some of the answers we get, we don't have those programs. So we're looking seriously at how can we downsize, eliminate programs, add new programs. One example is cybersecurity. And we've made a conscious investment of hiring 3 new faculty in cybersecurity. This is responding to what students want. And it cuts across 2 colleges. It cuts across the College of Arts and Sciences, the College of Business Administration. Some of the other ones they mentioned, physical therapy. We don't have that, but something to think about. Athletic training, entrepreneurship. We are working on that one. And there's some things, very interesting things that we're doing in entrepreneurship. Sports management, hospitality management, video game design. So things the students are interested in, and we're taking this seriously. So we're going to look at these prospective new programs and eventually probably be coming to you with new programs. The other biggie that we have is deferred maintenance. We've got about a $300 million problem. The system has about a $1.5 billion problem. Now, those 4 new buildings that I showed you the picture of right here, that's a big step in the right direction. And while we're doing this now, we're moving into the science building, for example. We're emptying out parts of Benton, and we got $25 million collected, half from the state, a quarter from the system, a quarter from ourselves, to do renovation. Things, unglamorous stuff, HVAC and things behind the walls. So we are tackling the problem, but we don't have $300 million just lying around that we can immediately address that, but we can pick away at it. And that's what we're doing, picking away at it. With that, I think that's my thank you. Thank you for all you do for the university system, higher education, and particularly for UMSL. That's it.
Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you.
Question? I have a question. So about 4 years ago, the board approved, because of great community support, the merger of the public radio with a
Beacon.
labor beacon,
All right.
and did it with the admonition that it seemed natural because of the great community support, but it was on a, sort of like on a trial program, and could it be sustainable? And would the community continue to support, and that we would revisit that? Could you tell us if it has been a success, and is it now sustainable on its own?
Well, first of all, it's been a great success. We took the news force from St. Louis Public Radio, which was about 12 people, and we combined it with the 13 or 14 from what was called the Beacon at the time. So we have a news force of about 2,500. At this point, we are solvent. We have to aggressively continue to raise funds. KWMU is a fundraising machine. And at this point, we're sustainable, but we have to continue at it. We have to be very aggressive. Right now, we don't put any dollars into that operation from state dollars. All of the salaries are done by fundraising. We do help with the facility. We've got a building there in Grand Center, and we help maintain the facility. But in terms of the operations, it's 100% raised by funds. But we have to go at it aggressively. It doesn't happen automatically.
It was also viewed as something of a prototype involving the J School from Columbia. And now we've had a change of deans, is there still a collaboration between the J School and this project?
What there is a very strong interest in a collaboration. I think we got hiccuped a little bit by the change in the deans, because the former dean was, very much an enthusiast for this project. So it's incumbent on us to revive that. So the answer is we had ideas of what a collaboration can be. It hasn't materialized yet, but there's interest.
Thank you.
So maybe ask the question a year from now, have a better answer for you.
Any other questions for Chancellor George? Thank you very much, Chancellor. Our next item is the consent agenda, excluding item number 7, which we will take up next. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Cindy, would you call the roll, please?
Curator Cups,
Yes.
Curator Graham,
Yes.
Curator Hendrickson,
Yes.
Curator Phillips,
Yes.
Curator Snowden,
Yes.
Curator Steelman,
Yes.
Curator Sunvold,
Yes.
Curator Voss.
Yes.
All votes in favor?
Item number 7, project approval of the School of Music.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'd like Ryan to come up and explain what that project is. It's, I think the board probably all knows, it's a music building involving a substantial private gift. Madam Chairman, Interim Vice President Ryan Rapp will present that, answer any questions.
So just briefly, this is a project that's been on the campus's master plan for a number of years. Been looking for a way to find funding for the project. With a significant donor gift, we now have the ability to do that. We've got $16 million in gifts and $8 million in campus reserves available to fund the project. This would be phase 1. Would allow for a possible phase 2 down the road. The other thing we get with this is we get to bring down the old building. And as we talked, you just heard about our $1.5 billion backlog in deferred maintenance. This lets us bring a building offline, and we'll actually take down our deferred maintenance by $3.2 million. So we're also swapping out an old building for a new building. But I'd welcome any questions the board might have on the project.
Vice President Rapp, if you would explain, please, this is phase 1, and how does this tie into this board's past approval of this, the entire project as a 50-50?
Yeah, so the project came to the board earlier this year for approval as a 50-50 project. And by starting the project now, it doesn't jeopardize our opportunity to receive matching funds from the state for the project. And if those were to come to fruition, we'd have the ability to move forward with a phase 2 of the project down the road.
But my understanding, this is what I want the board to understand, is that there is a substantial gift of approximately $10 million, I think.
Correct.
That by starting now, we secure, and that very substantial gift will be used in this phase.
That
But
is correct.
It is then still available, though, if the state should want to match it later on.
Correct.
But we all understand the budget constraints coming up. So
That is correct.
okay. He'll answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Will it be constructed of ugly brick again?
Is it gonna look like the white or red campus? And I'm looking at Pat Oker.
There is no ugly brick, it's just a perception of some people.
Pat Oker, I'm the interim dean of the College of Arts and Science. We have made a recommendation for the selection of the architecture firm, but there's been no plan, so.
And we
there's-
would bring the design back to the
Absolutely.
board for approval, so at that point, you would see what the building might look like.
Mr. Curator, if you're not here, I promise that I will make sure that the brick is not ugly.
Ugly, no ugly yellow brick, okay.
Speaking on behalf of the School of Music, there's a strong desire for no ugly brick, so.
Any other questions, Mr. Curator Phillips?
Yeah, so it being phase one, will it be fully utilized and accessible, serve its purpose, even if phase two is delayed or not done for some time?
Yes, it will, there will be the ability to fully utilize it. And if we were never able to do phase two, the building will be able to stand alone with just phase one. It's just giving us the opportunity down the road. If we had the ability to secure the funding, we could look at a phase two.
Second question is, I've heard that it's squeezing the theater department during this transition. What provisions will there be during the tear down of the portion and the construction to maintain the theater portion?
I'll let Dean Oker
I'd be
speak to
glad to speak to that. So one thing, the theater department is strongly supportive of this program, of this project, and as is the art department. Currently, all three units are share a building, and so they're very excited about this. We're currently looking for, the main issue for theater is finding a black box space, and there's a number of options that are being explored right now. We haven't selected a final one, but Campus Facilities is working on making sure that theater has a black box during the renovations, during the building stage.
And the final question, and maybe the overriding question is, I think most of us would agree that music and art is a major component of any great university, and particularly one that tries to be fairly broad-based. And certainly St. Louis, Kansas City, and Missouri University each have really good music departments. And I'm not as clear about how much goes on at S&T, but I'm sure there is a music department there. It is probably the gem of the UMKC campus, of all the four campuses. Certainly in certain areas, in certain departments, it is an economic driver in Kansas City of great importance, probably greater than St. Louis or Columbia, and has certain attributes that are internationally acclaimed and certainly nationally recognized. And so I'm in favor of continuing to raise the level of the music department at Columbia, and they have specialties that aren't available, I don't believe, or expertises that are better known than on the other, let's say, two campuses that they should accelerate in. By approving this, I hope and trust that we won't get pushback from the legislature when the time comes for the UMKC program to be put forward, which may be yet this year, whether it's on a 50-50 or whether it's on some other funding capacity to say, well, we just did something at UMKC, or we just did something at St. Louis. It's not the same level proportionate to the campus breadth that the conservatory is in Kansas City. And kudos to the private funding that got the project in Columbia going for the first phase. Very, very generous. That's dwarfed by the amount of private money that has been raised for the UMKC Conservatory, where they raised $48 million, although there's a time fuse on how long that money will be available. So I'm enthusiastic about the program. I'm glad that you've given the answers that you have, that it is usable. It isn't going to adversely impact on the theater department, which is also important. And I'm trusting that when the time comes for UMKC to try to leverage the $48 million in totally private funds, that it will be recognized that that's actually, I think, viewed by most people in western Missouri as the gem of that particular university at that time. So I'm in favor of it. I just wanted to make sure it was not going to dwarf, be a Taj Mahal to dwarf the Kansas City campus, which will be the third actual campus and will be adjacent to and easily accessible to the Kaufman Center for Performing Arts, which is probably the best performing arts building in Missouri or Kansas or Arkansas or Oklahoma.
Any other questions? Madam Chair, if I could, then I'd like to move the board approve what was previously item number 7 on the consent agenda, which is Phase 1 of the School of Music at the University of Missouri-Columbia campus. I hope I get a second, or I'll sort of die.
Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Curator Cups?
Yes.
Curator Graham?
Yes.
Curator Hendrickson?
Yes.
Curator Phillips?
Yes.
Curator Snowden?
Yes.
Curator Steelman?
Yes.
Curator Sunvold?
Yes.
Curator Voss?
Yes.
All votes in favor.
Thank you. The next item is the interim president's report. President Middleton.
Good morning. Chancellor George, the Board of Curators and I thank you very much for your hospitality. It's always great to be in St. Louis as we mark the end of a very productive year every year. And this year in particular, if you think about where we were last December and where we are today, we have much to be proud of collectively. Among the many highlights of this year, on top of the list is the announcement of President-designate Dr. Moon Choi. I want to recognize the board and the Presidential Search Committee for their diligent work to bring Dr. Choi to Missouri. I'm confident the university family will be served extremely well. Our campuses got to meet Dr. Choi last week and greeted him with our own personal brand of hospitality. And I want to thank you all for making him feel so welcome. Between now and his first day, March 1st, he and I will be in close contact to ensure a seamless and peaceful transition of leadership as he takes the helm of this great university. So you'll hear one last president's report from me in February, and then Moon will hit the ground running. Throughout my tenure as president, I've shared progress toward the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that the board introduced days before I took office. 2 of those initiatives included a full review of the UM system policies as they relate to staff and student conduct, and the creation of a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force to develop both short and long-term strategies, plans, and metrics for the UM system based on an inventory of current programs, policies, and practices. I'm pleased to report that earlier this week, Dr. Kevin McDonald, our system CDO, and I received the UM System Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Audit Report from IBIS Consulting Group. In addition, the task force that I appointed under the direction of Dr. S. David Mitchell of the MU Law School submitted their collective recommendations on the IBIS audit report to us, as well as their asset inventory of all diversity, equity, and inclusion-related programming at each of our 4 system campuses. As part of his system role, Dr. McDonald will take this information and work with his campus counterparts and leadership teams to evaluate the recommendations, divide the work into 4 key areas of his inclusive excellence framework: access and success, education and scholarship, campus climate and intergroup relations, and institutional infrastructure. With these recommendations and the commitment from our campuses and our campus communities, I'm optimistic that the culture we will continue to see cultivated across our great university system will improve greatly. Yesterday, you heard from Interim Vice President for Finance and Chief Financial Officer Ryan Rapp. He delivered the Efficiencies and Effectiveness Report, an annual publication coordinated by our Office of Finance. This year's report focused on the value of the UM system and highlighted the savings, upwards of $80 to $90 million, that the UM system saves to campuses collectively by providing shared services and economies of scale for the administrative functions it carries out. This report is nothing that we as a leadership team don't understand. However, to see the results outlined is really eye-opening and something that we should communicate outward to illustrate how system efforts help us continue to be good stewards of our public resources. As I've met with various groups this past year, I've been honest with my early lack of appreciation for the full value that the system provides to the campuses and the health system. After all, I was a campus guy for 30 years. While the work is not subtle, it could easily be overlooked because it is what you would consider behind-the-scenes work. And frankly, that's how it should be. The UM system was created to support the campuses, not the other way around. Because of this support, we are more efficient and effective in our work, and the campuses are able to free up time and effort and resources to focus on the academic mission, the teaching, the research, the service and economic development, the very reason that we exist. I appreciate the analysis this report provides and the work of our finance team to put a clearer view on the importance the system function plays in our university. And today, we heard plans to establish a centralized corporate compliance program from Larry Plutko. During my time on the Columbia campus, I spent a good deal of time as Deputy Chancellor overseeing the establishment of a conflict of interest compliance program that was so vital to keeping our campus running and keeping our research funding protected. This is a very important initiative, and I sincerely hope that we seriously consider implementing the plans for a corporate compliance program as quickly as possible. 1 year ago today, perhaps not today, around this time, I stood in the same place for the first time and gave my first report as UM System President. I knew there would be many challenges ahead, but I was ready to take on each of them because I knew that the university that I love was going to be better for it. I used that opportunity to remind myself and others that as a university system, one of the benefits is the opportunity for our campuses to learn from each other. Also to remind each of us that the rich history, tradition, and excellence of our university would not change even in light of what we had endured. And lastly, I reminded all of us of just how great an asset we are to the state of Missouri. I think each of us knew what we had to do to make the university stronger together, so that 1 year from then, we would be in a much better place than where we were then. And that brings us to today. The holidays always provide a perfect opportunity for reflection. As I reflect on 2016, I'm grateful for the chance to see our university community really come together. As we've had the tough conversations, I feel a new sense of respect and camaraderie that is refreshing and rejuvenating, something that was very much needed 1 year ago. So I want to thank each of you for really reaching down deep to do your part. We have each taken time to think about what this university means to us. We've imagined what it could be, and we have taken action to ensure that we live up to our own greatest expectations. And I sincerely thank each of you. And as always, I want to thank the board for the opportunity and privilege to serve as interim president of the University of Missouri system and its 4 top-rated campuses. For the outgoing board members, thank you for showing confidence in me at a crucial moment for our university. I'm both humbled and proud of all that we've accomplished together, especially as both of you have served as chair during my presidency. Don, thank you for convincing me to take on this awesome opportunity and responsibility. I will forever be indebted to you for that persuasive approach you took. And Pam, thank you for taking this year to focus on the culture of respect and what it means for a university community, both now and in the future. For the rest of the board, I look forward to working with you more as we welcome a new leader of this great university system. And I'm sure that we will be better a year from today than we are today, as I believe we're better today than we were a year ago. So thank you very much, and I'm willing to take any questions, easy questions, that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Middleton. We're down to the good and welfare of the board. Does anybody have any items for the good and welfare of the board? If there is nothing further, then I would ask Curator Cups to join me at the podium. I believe we have a resolution for Curator Cups. Would you read it, Cindy?
Whereas Donald L. Cups served the people of Missouri with distinction as a member of the University of Missouri Board of Curators from January 26, 2011 until December 31, 2016. And whereas during his term of service, he served as a member of the Audit, Academic, Student, and External Affairs, Compensation and Human Resources, Finance, Governance, Resources and Planning, and Executive Committees. And he served as chair of the Compensation and Human Resources, Finance, Governance, Resources and Planning, and Executive Committees. And whereas in 2014, Curator Cups was named Vice Chair of the Board of Curators and was elected to be Chair of the Board of Curators from January 1 to December 31, 2015, during a historically challenging time in the university's history. And whereas while serving as chair of the board, he celebrated the Year of the Student as his board chair theme, highlighting key areas to enhance the learning experience for all University of Missouri students. And whereas during his service on the board, Curator Cups advocated to increase recognition of the importance and value of the University of Missouri system to the state of Missouri and strongly suggested that the University Diversity Program also address economic inequality. And whereas Curator Cups served on the search committees for the 23rd and 24th presidents of the University of Missouri system. And whereas although his first meeting as chair went so long that it resulted in an abrupt end to the telepresence connection, Curator Cups went on to serve with honor, on which fellow curator John Phillips reflected, "You have been and continue to be a positive and calming influence as chair." And whereas Curator Cups advocated on behalf of all University of Missouri system faculty and staff to ensure that the university provides the highest quality benefits and a stable retirement program to our valued employees. And whereas a member of Alpha Gamma Rho fraternity, he has always been an active proponent for agriculture and plant sciences research and served as a knowledgeable and enthusiastic emissary for the entire University of Missouri system. And whereas while Curator Cups balanced a law practice with the business of the board, he and his wife Mary were wonderful advocates of the university and participated in many system events. And whereas Curator Cups is a person of high moral standards and a true professional, his contributions will have a lasting influence on the future of the University of Missouri system. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Curators, on behalf of the students, faculty, staff, and alumni of the University of Missouri system, and on behalf of the citizens of the state of Missouri, does hereby adopt this resolution in sincere appreciation of the dedicated and devoted leadership of Donald L. Cups, and also that his future relations with the University of Missouri system be formally recognized by bestowing the title of Curator Emeritus upon Donald L. Cups. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Board of Curators cause this resolution to be spread upon the minutes of this meeting, and that a duly inscribed copy thereof be furnished to Donald L. Cups.
Do I have a motion to accept the resolution as read?
I move that it be accepted as read and entered into the records of this board.
I'd second that motion.
Cindy, would you call the roll, please?
Curator Cups? Curator Graham?
Gladly, yes.
Curator Henriksen?
Yes.
Curator Phillips?
Yes.
Curator Snowden?
Yes.
Curator Steelman? Curator Sunvold?
Yes.
Curator Voss?
Yes.
Okay, all votes in favor.
Thank you very much. Being a curator has been one of the greatest honors of my life. It's for an institution that I love and that provided me an education. But most of all, it's given me the opportunity to come to know all the people. Over the past 6 years, I've met some of the most talented and dedicated people I've ever known. I should not start naming names because you never know when you're going to leave someone out and someone that you should name. That being said, I'm going to break my own rule. I would like to thank Chairperson Henriksen, who served as my vice chairman and my confidant and my advisor last year. And I will always remember when I would give her an idea and she would respond Well, why would we want to do that? Which would cause me to further reflect. But she has always been a great support, or she was always a great support to me, and we, starting very near the same time, went through most of everything together. She has just now gotten down the meeting management of being able to get meetings done very promptly on schedule, and it's a shame she's leaving, but at least she got this one down. To my fellow curators, I counted earlier this week, and I've served with 18 different curators and 4 student representatives. And the thing that always impressed me is how smart, how professional, and how dedicated everyone was. We always seemed to be dealing with highly charged, stressful situations and in executive sessions, and we often had differing opinions, but those opinions were expressed courteously, in a thoughtful manner. We voted and went on. Even when I disagreed with other curators, I always believed that each curator was voting in a manner that he or she thought was in the best interest of the institution. The University Hall staff. President Middleton, what can you say? When we called, he rose to the occasion and did what we needed. I will always be grateful for you doing. Former interim president, interim chancellor, and general counsel Steve Owens, who has served as my attorney, advisor, and friend for the past 6 years. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being our attorney and our advisor, and also the institutional memory for the Board of Curators. The other general officers, I'll not name you, but I want you to know how much I respect you, and I realize how hard you work. You're the people that are frequently referred to as those high-paid administrators. And being in the position as a curator, we come to know how hard you work and how dedicated you are. Cindy Harmon, what can you say about Cindy? Cindy confronts chaos and makes it manageable. And she always does so with a smile on her face. When I was board chairman, when a problem arose, the first person I wanted to talk to was Cindy, because she would know what to do, who to talk to, or sometimes just listen to the problem. Phyllis Hawk always was there to help, to guide us, to get us where we needed to be. The campuses, Chancellors George, Schrader, Foley, and Morton. I want you to know that how much you mean to this institution, that you all probably have the hardest job, that you have to deal with all the administration, the students, the faculty, the staff, and literally you make the train run. And I appreciate what you do and in the way you do it. The faculty, and I've met hundreds of faculty over the past 6 years, and the thing that always impresses me is when I meet a faculty member, I see the gleam in their eye that they're excited about the research and the teaching that they're doing. Because it's what they're doing for their students that makes what we all do worthwhile. It's their teaching, their research, and their service that makes this university great. The staff. I would very much like to thank all the staff members of the university on all of the 4 campuses and at University Hall, who made sure we made it to the meetings, who served us frequently breakfast, lunch, and dinner in conference rooms. And they were always courteous and helpful. Even when I couldn't figure out how to open my files on my iPad for the 8th time, they always were very cheerful in helping me do it. Lastly, I'd like to thank my wife, who is not here, but who cheerfully went on long car rides for 6 years. Thank you.
At this time, as Vice Chair of the Board, I would like to ask Pam to step forward and call upon our Board Secretary, Cindy Harmon, to read a resolution that's been proposed by the Board honoring our Chairperson, Pam Hendrickson.
Whereas Pamela Quigg Henriksen served the people of Missouri with distinction as a member of the University of Missouri Board of Curators from August 19, 2011 until December 31, 2016. And whereas during her term of service, she served on the Academic, Student, and External Affairs, Audit, Governance, Resources and Planning, Compensation and Human Resources, Finance, and Executive Committees. And whereas Curator Henriksen, while serving as chair of the Audit Committee in 2014, recommended a new approach that would increase audit coverage internally and provide an incredible value to the university. Her vision and leadership resulted in 2.5 times the previous audit coverage and consulting services for the same cost. And whereas she was named Vice Chair of the Board of Curators for 2015 and was elected to be Chair of the Board of Curators from January 1 to December 31, 2016. During 2 historically challenging years in the university's history. Her focus while serving as chair was defining a culture of respect. And whereas, while serving as chair of the board, Curator Henriksen oversaw a successful search for the 24th System president, after also having participated in the search for the 23rd System president. And whereas while serving as chair, she recommended procedures for board engagement with faculty, students, and staff to provide an opportunity for understanding their ideas and concerns and to elevate knowledge and understanding of governance. And whereas in 2015, she provided the opening address at the inaugural System Women in Leadership Conference on the merits of volunteerism and mentorship. And whereas in 2016, Curator Henriksen accepted an appointment to the University of Missouri Healthcare Board and to the Board of Directors of the University of Missouri-Columbia Medical Alliance to ensure that healthcare providers succeed in their mission of exceptional clinical service and support for the education and research missions of the university. And whereas Curator Henriksen balanced a law practice with business of the Board of Curators and sacrificed time with her husband Alden and family. And whereas Curator Henriksen is a true professional with the ability to remain calm under stress and still maintain a sense of humor. When important decisions were being made by the board, she would often say, "Let's think about this," and point out potential unintended consequences of the decision. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Curators, on behalf of the students, faculty, staff, and alumni of the University of Missouri System, and on behalf of the citizens of the state of Missouri, does hereby adopt this resolution in sincere appreciation of the dedicated and devoted leadership of Pamela Quigg Henriksen. And also that her future relations with the University of Missouri System be formally recognized by bestowing the title of Curator Emeritus upon Pamela Quigg Henriksen. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Board of Curators cause this resolution to be spread upon the minutes of this meeting and that a duly inscribed copy thereof be furnished to Pamela Quigg Henriksen.
The Board Vice Chair would entertain a motion to approve this resolution and to have it spread among the records of the Board of Curators.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Cindy, could you call the roll?
Curator Cups?
Yes.
Curator Graham?
Yes.
Curator Henriksen? Curator Phillips?
Yes.
Curator Snowden?
Yes.
Curator Steelman?
Yes.
Curator Sunvol?
Yes.
Curator Voss?
Yes.
All votes in favor.
We're going to call upon Pam to make a few remarks again, but on behalf of her fellow curators and certainly on behalf of the university, I want to tell all of those present today what an outstanding job that Pam has done leading this board and working on behalf of the university during this past year. As has been mentioned by others, this has been, I guess we could say, an interesting year, a year in which we selected a new president, a year in which we held a number of meetings, a year in which we had a athletic director come to one campus and leave very quickly, a year in which the legislature appointed a commission to study the university. And I can tell you that Pam Henriksen has provided even enlightened and strong leadership during that period of time. I probably have heard the term in the last year, herding cats, more than I've heard in the past. And I can tell you that with the strong personalities we have on the board, it was challenging at times for Pam. But she always maintained her sense of humor, and she always listened, and then she took strong leadership. And this university and this board is better off because of her service and leadership. I understand that the SEC is created a Curators Coach of the Year award that will be presented to Pam, because taking these individuals and building them into a team, and also that the AGB has going to grant an award, Valor Under Fire, to Pam Henriksen for leadership under some sometimes pretty challenging circumstances, but certainly Pam has provided leadership that has bettered this university. Pam?
Thank you very much, Marcy. That's very kind. Don Cups gave the best speech in this circumstance that I've ever heard, so what can I say at this point? I adopt everything he said. Thank you to all. It's been an amazing experience, and when someone calls and asks you to do something like this, you say yes for reasons that I said yes because I value public education. I want to be a part of that. And as Don said, it's been one of the best experiences of my life. But what you don't know is what you're going to get out of it. You know it's going to be something, but you don't know what it's going to be. And it's been the incredible people that I've had the opportunity to work with that has been of such great benefit to me. And we have one of our former student curators with us today, and Patrick. The student curators have been fabulous. What I will miss the most is being on campus and seeing all the great things that you all do every day. The students we saw this morning were terribly impressive. I would have loved to spend a half a day with each one of them. I'd like to know more about their research. And this goes on here every day. And that's why we serve on the Board of Curators. And so keep up the good work. And thank you all for all the kind words. I appreciate it. Next on our agenda, we need to adopt a resolution for David Stewart, who is unable to be with us, but will also be leaving the board. We won't read that resolution, but could I have a motion?
I move approval of the resolution as presented.
Second.
Cindy, would you call the roll?
Curator Cups?
Yes.
Curator Graham?
Yes.
Curator Henriksen?
Yes.
Curator Phillips?
Yes.
Curator Snowden?
Yes.
Curator Steelman?
Yes.
Curator Sunvol?
Yes.
Curator Voss?
Yes.
All votes in favor?
All right. Now it's time to vote for our new officers for next year. Do I have a motion for our chairman for next year?
I nominate Maurice Graham.
I second the motion.
Are there any other nominations? Cindy, would you call the roll?
Curator Cups?
Yes.
Curator Graham?
Yes, abstain.
Curator Henriksen?
Yes.
Curator Phillips?
Yes.
Curator Snowden?
Yes?
Curator Steelman?
Yes.
Curator Sunvold?
Yes.
Curator Voss?
Yes.
Okay, all votes in favor.
All right. Is there a nomination for vice chair?
I nominate Curator John R. Phillips for vice chair.
Second.
Cindy, are there any further nominations? Cindy, would you call the roll?
Curator Cups?
Yes.
Curator Graham?
Yes,
Curator Henriksen?
Yes.
Curator Phillips?
Abstain.
Curator Snowden?
Yes?
Curator Steelman?
Yes.
Curator Sunvold?
Yes.
Curator Voss?
Yes.
All votes in favor.
All right.
Pam, as is the proud tradition at this time, as you leave as not only a board member but as chair, I present to you this plaque, the gavel, signifying your leadership this past year to Pamela Q. Hendrickson, 2016 Chair, University of Missouri Board of Curators, in appreciation of outstanding leadership.
Thank you very much. Now, Marcy, it's time for me to hand the working gavel to you. And as is tradition, I will read from the history of the University of Missouri. I truly did find solace in this book when times were tough. I would read it and realize that this is not the worst time the university's experienced. We've gone through a lot, and we can survive. So I have chosen to read to you from The Future, the chapter written by former President Middlebush. While one cannot presume to prophesy the future of the university in detail, nor lay down rigid long-term plans for any institution in this rapidly changing world, there are certain principles reasonably self-evident which should guide us, if the University of Missouri is to grow with any surety toward those high ideals which American education has set up for itself. These principles are so fundamental that they must always be kept clearly in mind by those responsible for the university's development. They're quite simple in statement, but in spite of their simplicity, they've been all too often ignored or violated in the region of higher education. The fourth principle I shall name uniquely belongs to our university. I refer to the direct obligation of the University of Missouri to the state of Missouri, which brought it into being, fosters its continued existence, and upon which its future depends. The progress of the university during the last 100 years has been directly related to this service to the state. The university did not move forward unaffected by the development of Missouri. Its program was not planned upon a purely theoretical basis. From the outset, the university evolved as an institution closely connected functionally with all of the state's intellectual, cultural, and professional enterprises. Many reaches important to our citizens have been prosecuted, and the results of this body of research have been made available constantly. Thus, through its well-balanced plan of organization, the university stands today prepared to render to the state a threefold service: the training of students, the prosecution of research, and adult education through the extension divisions. I hope you will find comfort in it as well.
Thank you, Pam. And following the practice developed by our good friend Don Cups, I'm going to be very brief. I'll have more remarks about my plans and thoughts for the year ahead on February 9th when we meet again. But I want to tell you that I am so proud to serve with this board of curators, and I'm so proud to work with all of those administrators and friends of the university who are seated out in the audience today. You don't have to think a second time why we are here when you walk away from a breakfast like we had this morning and see those young people. That reminds you about as poignantly as it could possibly occur as to why we are here and why our responsibility is so strong and lasting to these young people who deserve the best quality of education that we can provide them through our 4 campuses. So I'm honored and humbled to serve. I look forward to it, and I'm excited about the year ahead for all of us, particularly for our 4 campuses of the system. So thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other items for the good and welfare of the board? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn 1 hour early.
I'm so moved. Second.
Cindy, would you please call the roll?
Curator Cups?
Yes.
Curator Graham?
Yes.
Curator Henriksen?
Yes.
Curator Phillips?
Yes.
Curator Snowden?
Yes?
Curator Steelman?
Yes.
Curator Sunvold?
Yes.
Curator Voss?
Yes.
All votes in favor.
We are adjourned.